listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
We're going to label this the social distancing episode because we all are in our own homes, or at least all in different places for this episode. So it's going to sound a little different. We're also actually going to be talking about social distancing and what's actually happening with all of us while we're in our homes, what's going on in the world around us right now with this global pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. We figured it would be a good time for us to reflect on what's happening around us, how we can do some self-care, because that's really important when we're in these really stressful situations, and also how the church is responding, how each of our individual churches are responding. And I think, Bree, this is your episode. I don't know if we labeled this one like a Bree's as something. I don't know. but
whatever.
This is your thing. So where do you want to start? What do we want to start talking about first?
Well, so just to give everyone some context, at least here in the state of Missouri, as of about 20 minutes ago, the Missouri governor basically instated stay at home for the entire state of Missouri. Now, those of us who live in St. Louis City and St. Louis County have been abiding by that kind of a policy for the last probably week and a half. I know that at the International Center where we are employed, many of the people that work there are pretty much all working from home at this point. So I've been working from home for about a week and a half. I haven't been out very much, save for a couple of, grocery shopping trips a couple of times. And so I think the first thing that I want to do is talk about how is it affecting you guys? For me, it's very important to check in on people. So I'll call my coworkers once a day and my teammates and just be like, hey, what's going on? What do you got going on? This is a really good opportunity to sort of speak to people on a personal level and be vulnerable. So if you wanted to share a high and a low of being stay at home or socially distant or whatever, I think there are pros and cons. So it would be interesting to see sort of what you all are experiencing, good or bad.
So I am hopeful that I hit my low at the beginning of this week.
Same.
Monday and Tuesday were they were just rough. It was a number of things that sort of stacked up together. I was running into roadblocks with trying to get work done, and that was frustrating, and I felt like I couldn't get any real momentum going. And then I also had where I'm just stuck at home, and I live alone, and so I don't get to see people. And normally I actually get a lot of my sort of personal interactions from work, and so I'm I'm not going to see any humans except the stranger at the grocery store, and that's just not satisfying. And that was overwhelming. And I was dealing with also just grieving the loss of, I had to say goodbye to my dog at the beginning of March. And so that's on top of all of this as well. And so it's just rough. But I feel like on Wednesday, I woke up with a new mindset, and it was I had sort of wrapped my mind around, this is how things are. This is the context you're in. It felt a little bit like it did after I had this just now came to me. It felt a little bit like it did after I had a really severe culture shock when I lived in Japan. And I had an episode that was just really intense, and it's just psychologically draining and wrenching and awful, and it doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's what it felt like when I came out of that. I was like, okay, this is how it is. I will move on. And that's sort of what it feels like. So maybe it's a little like culture shock. I don't know if there's other missionaries out there listening. Do you feel like you could agree with that, or other people who have lived abroad and gone through the culture shock experience? Any similarities? Maybe let us know.
So I've been working at home, and we should probably say that we're recording this on April 3rd. So this is going to be dropping a few weeks from now, post Easter. So who knows? By the time this posts, things could be totally different. I guess we'll find out when this episode drops. But I've been working at home for around 2 weeks, I think. I've kind of lost track of days. We're in a new month now, so I'm really confused what's actually happening. Every day kind of feels the same. The first week was probably the lowest, though. The transition was super hard. I think I probably had like one of those big emotional cries every day because it was just weird. I was, we were all transitioning. I was setting up my home office so I could record and broadcast from home, and my husband was still working, and it was just hard. And not being able to see people, that transition of being around people to being around literally nobody for an entire day was just really, really emotionally and mentally taxing. My husband is now not working, so he's home with me all day, which is both a blessing and a curse, I guess. Because he wants to be working too, so it's hard on him. I appreciate having him around, though. It's nice to have another person in the house. I mean, it was exciting also to have that transition, which was a weird thing. It's a new adventure. It's a new normal for us. So it was also this new adventure to have to set up a studio and to have to do things from home and to kind of figure out what was going to happen. And I like new adventures, sort of, for the most part. So this one's going to be a longer one than we all expected, maybe at the beginning. A blessing in disguise, I think, is that I've actually been talking even more with my friends and my close family. Even though it's all virtually, we've been video chatting more. I video chatted with my brother and sister-in-law and their kids this morning for like an hour, and they were just like showing them around the house, and they were showing us their toys, and it was just super fun. So
Yeah.
there's all these connection points that are happening now that we've sort of kind of been like, we chat, but we don't like video chat this much. And I'm actually hoping that when all of this calms down, I don't even want to say going back to normal anymore, because I don't even know if it's, I don't know when it's actually going to feel like normal again. But when this all kind of passes, I really hope we keep some of that connection with people that we've developed out of necessity. I hope we keep that connection and checking in on each other, because it's such an important thing.
As I'm listening and thinking and sort of mentally processing all of this, for me, I'm wondering, like, how much have I, it's almost a regret, because it's like, how much have I taken community for granted? It's work. It's not, it's not your buddies. It's not hanging out fun times. I mean, it can be pretty fun sometimes, but it's not, you still have a job to do. You have a paycheck that you have to make. And just being away from that has its stressors, or lack of, it's a different kind of stress. I mean, man, the Corona cries were real for me this week. Like, I miss my team. I miss being in that building. I went grocery shopping on Wednesday with my husband, and I'm like, does it feel kind of like post-apocalyptic dystopian society to you right now? Because, like, there was a handful of people in the store, and they were all wearing masks, and there was like a tumbleweed and a pinball machine in the liquor aisle. Like, I'm just like, what is happening right now? Like, what have we been thrown into? So, yeah, it's being around people is so important. Like, there's a reason that God designed us the way that he designed us. Like, yeah, this may have been an introvert's paradise for the first 4 or 5 days, but like, I have to believe, like, nobody nobody wants this. And I think that that's just reflective of God's plan for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is very similar to if you read historical accounts of the world wars and how one day life is normal and the next day everything's different and you have no idea for how much longer it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it just until the end. For me, things haven't perhaps changed as much as they have for you guys. I'm a homeschool mom.
Mm-hmm.
We quarantine pretty much all the time anyway, but that doesn't mean that it is easy, because as you were saying, Brie, even the introverted homebodies like me, we're going crazy right now. Like, I feel for you extroverts, but I feel so thankful about this that, when Ken deployed in January, after about a month, we had a regularly scheduled, we're going to go spend a month or two with Grandma and Grandpa in Michigan, where there's a lot more room out in the country to run. And so we got here mid-February, and then coronavirus hits very soon after that. And I feel so thankful that we're in a place where, yes, we are very social isolated. We're miles outside of town, but the kids can run and play out in the grass and, enjoy that. And I feel so thankful, but I also feel so isolated.
Mm-hmm.
We may have only gone out, 3, 4, 5 times a week to church, to youth group, to the grocery store, to whatever. Those are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And just because
Yeah.
we only have a few outings doesn't mean those outings aren't extremely important to us. In fact, perhaps
Yes,
more
ma'am.
important. One challenge for me has been, we're in Michigan, and so we're going on week 3 of social distancing now. And the governor announced yesterday that schools are just going to be out for the rest of the year. Now, you be that homeschool mom who explains to your kids that nothing has changed for them. But it's hard enough to keep them focused on task, and once the spring weather hits anyway. But when they know that every other kid in the state is just done for the year, that's been rough. So motivation has been tough. But I just feel so thankful that it could have been so much worse. And it is a lot worse. And I don't want to sound smug, because I know there are people who have lost their jobs. There are people who are alone in an apartment with no one to check on them, and that it's rough. And I feel so much compassion, and the kids and I pray for those people that we don't even know, every day. And we'll continue to do that. But for my part, I just feel a lot of gratitude.
Like, for me, a blessing in disguise, we haven't spent any money. Like, all the things you could be doing, like going out to eat and stuff, like, we saved a bunch of money this past month because we haven't had to do that. So, like,
although
we haven't had to do
it should be noted that my Amazon book budget has gone up just a smidge. But we're all reading.
That's necessary, though.
Yeah, essential.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
essential. We haven't had to fill our car up with gas in I don't know how long, because we're not going anywhere. And if we do go anywhere, it's close enough that we're either walking or biking. So
Right.
we drive like maybe once, maybe twice a week, maybe. So there are silver linings to this in places.
Yeah.
I think another silver lining that I would like to touch on is sort of the resilience of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The ability, like, I don't know what the future holds for our congregations. And I think that there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, and, I can say that, God's got this, it's in God's hands, and that's true. And that is not necessarily a balm right now for people. But to see a lot of churches sort of adapting and overcoming so quickly in the last few weeks, churches that are live streaming on Facebook, or they've set up a YouTube account, and basically, making, and even if it's like having communion with 10 or less people at a time, sort of the ability for churches and church leaders and pastors to adapt to this whole situation, I think has been tremendously fascinating and heartening to experience. For us personally at our church, we've switched to an all online streaming format for church service and Bible study, and it's been weird to get accustomed to, but we are blessed that we actually have that opportunity to be able to connect in that way. So it is interesting to see how each congregation is sort of governing how they get through this whole pandemic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for technology at this point. People keep relating what we're going through now to the 1918 pandemic, and I keep thinking about how really blessed we are to have all of this technology and to be able to do the things that we're able to do now. 100 years ago, you couldn't do any of this stuff, so it was a completely different situation. And it has been a struggle though for churches, for pastors, for church musicians, for people who work in the church to be able to still take care of their flock when they can't actually physically meet face to face, because so much of the church is being physically present with each other, and communion is you're physically present for communion, and we don't get to do that either as a whole church or at all. That is hard, and that's hard for a pastor to go through. And I feel for pastors who are struggling with this, and especially by the time this podcast drops, it will be post Easter. But right now, we're pre Easter, and so pastors they've got to deal with this for Easter, which is it is a hard time of the year to not be able to meet together and to know that we're not going to be able to celebrate Easter together. It's hard. It's weird.
I just want to cry every time I think about it.
But will there be an Easter that we will be looking forward to and anticipating more than this one?
Yeah.
In our lifetimes, is there going to be another one that we look forward to with such anticipation and longing? I don't think so.
I feel like we're living the beatitude. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Right.
I haven't.
Right.
It's been going on a month since I've had the opportunity to have the Lord's Supper, and the desire for that doesn't go away. And I know there were churches that up until very recently only communed quarterly, and I don't know how I would thrive under those circumstances. But I'm so in awe of the pastors and other, church staff and communicators who have just figured it out. Pastors, a lot of pastors, they are not necessarily tech savvy. It's not, there isn't a huge emphasis on that in seminary. They're taught theology, they're taught missiology, they're not taught technology. But the fact that so many of them have jumped in feet first, and even if it's a little awkward the first week or two, the sync is off, maybe the video's sideways, they're doing their best to get the word to the people. And I feel so much appreciation for that. And for, the pastors who are sending out extra devotional materials, the youth groups that are taking the time and trouble to get together with all the kids and meet by Zoom, everything that allows us to continue the community of the church and the spread of the word. I am, yes, jaw-droppingly in awe of how the church is rising up to meet these challenges.
I have to give a shout out to the LCMS communications team too, for their work. I know right at the beginning of all of this, when it all happened, when it all went down, there were several people that, just churning out these resources so that the pastors who don't really know what they're doing can do something and still be connected with their people. And a shout out also to the KFUO staff for continuing chapel services too. Speaking of pastors, chapel services that are generally from the International Center, but nobody's there now. So, putting together these quote unquote chapel services from people's homes, piecing stuff together so that we're still able to do that too, as a daily thing, because there are people who are relying on those resources
Hey, I am right
to have
now.
some sort
I'm
of,
still
yeah.
tuning in to chapel every day. It's a highlight of my
Yay.
morning.
Yeah, well, and for those of us who work at the International Center, or who that already was part of our day, now where it's even more so, like, I'm home,
Yeah.
this is still part of it's still connecting me back to all of these people, even if I'm not with them in person. I know that we're all still, tuning into chapel. It's kind of cool.
So as we talk about pastors and leaders of the church serving their congregant members, sort of in some cases bending over backwards to make sure that people can, quote unquote, attend church every week. I was wondering what everyone's thought was about how can we reciprocate that as members of a church? How can we show support to our pastors, our DCEs, our teachers, to our church as a building, even? Like, what are your thoughts on how you do that?
First and foremost, of course, pray.
Yes.
pray for them, for the world. But also, and I need to be even more disciplined about this than I have been. Make sure that check gets in the mail, or if your church has online giving, be hyper disciplined about that, because that a lot of other people are maybe struggling to keep up with that. And, if we can help shoulder that burden to make sure that we have a church to go back to when this is all over, that really strikes me as important. But I know that those are just the low-hanging fruit. I'm sure you all have better answers than that.
Well, I work in fundraising at Synod, and I have the privilege of speaking with LCMS donors who sometimes come to us and they're like, look, I want to be able to help. I want to be able to support World Relief Human Care. I just had a conversation with a gentleman. He lives in Nashville. So his congregation and community was hit really hard by those recent tornadoes. And he emailed me and he said, man, I really want to help right now. But I mean, what do you think? What should I do? And so I personally think it's the right thing to do. And I'm certain that my teammates would endorse this. But I'm telling him, I'm saying, look, do what you can for your community. Do what you can for your church, your pastor. That $5 that you typically give to the Global Mission Fund every month, tack it onto your offering. There are different ways to increase your tithing. Maybe do it 3 times a month for a while instead of 2. Maybe increase your tithing by $2 or $3 every week. There's a bunch of different ways to do it that will sort of have this multiplying factor, which would then be a blessing to not only the congregation and the ministry of the church, but to those who are serving us as well as shepherds of the flock.
There was, I think it's over now, but Adrienne Hines there's usually a mug swap every year that she gets Lutheran ladies involved in, and at this time of pandemic, instead we got the mug swap together, but instead it was exchanging $5 for something, an Amazon gift card for your pastor, a coffee gift card for a pastor, or a $5 donation to an RSO or a local food pantry or something. But supporting, because we can't offer to babysit because social distancing, buying gift cards to a restaurant and also supporting a local small business at the same time, giving those types of things to our pastors and church workers so that they can, enjoy a night not having to cook, since everyone is cooking at home and apparently stress baking every day or something.
Yes.
I haven't made my sourdough starter yet, but I have plans.
And then it's all over. But we have to use the resources that we have, and right now that is so limited because we can't do any in-person resources. But if you have the ability to support financially, or even sending cards, there's been a lot of ladies in the lounge group on Facebook mentioning, they'll go through their church directory and just call a person every day and see how they're doing, which would be really important, especially if you have older members or a lot of shut-ins, or going through the directory and sending cards to everyone, or checking in on people so that people know that we are still community, we are still together, especially if you don't have the funds to be giving a lot of extra money, which some people may not. There are, there's other ways to check in and to give the emotional and mental support that we also all are in desperate need of during this time.
Well, and I'm gonna shout out Synod Communications again, because you want to talk about valuable things that don't necessarily have a dollar amount attached to them. Information is power right now. Information is so valuable, and so I think props are due to our communications team as they share how federal acts and bills that are being passed into law as a result of COVID-19, how that is going to affect our church workers. Not only that, but saying, look, we are entering some unprecedented times. Here's how you can protect yourself and your family. And just sort of sharing, sort of sifting through what something like the CARES Act means for people who work for the church, and say, you have this opportunity to protect your paycheck or apply for a small business loan, just basically keep your livelihood. Because we're seeing that as being, everyone is vulnerable to job loss at this point. But I mean, we certainly want to do whatever we can to make sure that our church workers are being cared for, certainly. So I think that has been really fantastic too.
So the cards of encouragement, this was, if you're a homeschooler out there, make this a homework assignment, because I did this and it was fantastic. Every one of my children was assigned to send an encouragement card to somebody, and we're going to do it again one of these days. But my son, and he did give permission to share this, so he sent a note to his 4th and 5th grade teacher, his Lutheran school teacher, Mrs. Mackey, who has been mentioned on this show before.
Mrs. Mackey!
Mrs. Mackey!
And she asked, I did not know what went in the note, but she was so tickled, she sent me a photo of it. And I just got to read it out loud, embarrass my son a little bit. Dear Mrs. Mackey, you won't need a Kleenex.
I'm kidding. No.
Dear Mrs. Mackey, I understand that there is a virus going around. I also understand that it is affecting the elderly over 60. Now, I am by no means stating that you are over 60. You don't look a day over 18. What I am saying is to keep an eye out. You are very dear to me. Chris.
Aww.
It does. He took 5 sentences, and it made my day. It made her day. It made It does not take much to get out a note card, write a few sentences, maybe end with, you are very dear to me, because this is so true, and pop it in the mail and bring a smile to somebody's face. Do it every day for a month. I tried, it lasted 4 days, but I'm going to pick it back up again, because I think it's a good thing that that we encourage the people in our family and in our church communities this way. Anyway.
Yeah.
I love
it. And if you don't want to spend money on stamps, you can also text and email, because stamps aren't cheap.
True.
I guess an idea I have, which is more forward-looking, but like there is stuff we can do, certainly, and you guys named all the things that were on my mind as far as how we'd be able to care for pastors and church workers. But I think maybe thinking ahead and tucking this away in the back of our minds for once this is finally over, considering at that point, maybe doing something special for your pastor to okay, you made it through this. It was hard, but take a week away, or, do a bed and breakfast or something somewhere, or do something to care for them once this is finished, to sort of acknowledge that the time has passed, but take some time to sort of extra recover and decompress and that sort of thing. There are some, there are resources that are available to pastors. Even now, I know they're doing extra stuff with Soldiers of the Cross to provide support for pastors who are going through hard times. But maybe especially after this is all done, think about that then, as far as things you can do to provide some extra care, maybe a retreat or something like that he
Oh,
and his
for
wife could go on.
sure. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. I think about places like Doxology or Grace Place or
Yeah,
Shepherd's
Mhm.
Canyon
yeah,
or something where they can
exactly.
the pastors who have been pouring themselves out can refill a little bit. I love that,
Yeah.
Erin.
Yeah. And their wives too. Shout out to all the
Yes.
pastors' wives who are
Thank you.
also going through this
Right.
alongside their husbands. 'Cause
Right.
it's not easy
And they're picking up
for
on that
pastors' wives either.
technology too.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
yeah, and a lot of them are a two-person team putting this. I've seen
Right.
pictures and stories that the church services are literally done by the pastor and his wife. So,
Yeah.
Right.
shout out to all you pastors' wives too who are
Yes, ma'am.
trucking through this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the greatest things that I've seen in this whole entire experience is how great people are being to each other. I mean, you've seen all the viral things, people out on their balconies singing opera and like putting signs up, and we have this thing in our neighborhood. I don't know if it's a national thing that's happening, but I know in our neighborhood people will put up teddy bears in their windows, and so when families
Huh.
go for walks, it's bear hunting basically. And so if you see a bear on your walk, you get a point or whatever. So it has been such a joy to see how people are being so excellent with each other and to each other. Um, Even through the church, one of our local congregations they're on SLU's campus, St. Louis University, and they are sort of in the heart of like Hospital Row. So we have two very, very renowned children's hospitals in the area. And so what they did, it's Reliant Community. What they did was they assembled, I think they've been assembling lunches for the staff at one of those children's hospitals. And if you check it out on Facebook, you see basically this table lined with lunches that were prepared by this church in service to the community at large. And so people are stepping up. And I think that as much as we are worried about the future and anxious about the future, and it's almost crippling to have to deal with that anxiety and yet get on with your life. It is so cool to see people and congregations stepping up and serving their neighbors. So I think to everyone out there who is helping out wherever they can, keep up the good work, and just thank you for cheerfully serving your neighbor and serving the Lord through that.
Amen.
But I do think too that as we are living in service to God and service to neighbor, it's also important to make sure that you're also taking care of yourself. You cannot give of yourself when your reserves have run out. And so I think sort of to wrap this all up and put a nice little bow on it, I was going to share some things that are helping me right now practice some self-care. I know that's kind of a buzzword right now, but it is, I think, more critical than ever because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm going stir crazy here sometimes. And so it's not only staying healthy, it's not only washing your hands and standing 6 feet apart from somebody. It's staying sane too. And making sure that you're taking care of your mental health and your emotional health and your spiritual health as well. So for me, thankfully, the weather has been pretty nice here in St. Louis. And so one of the things that I have been trying to make a point to do every day is to go on a walk. 20-minute, 30-minute walk with my husband and my dog, just basically breathe in some fresh air, hunt for bears, get the sun on my face. I think a lot of people are taking advantage of that now, especially with the weather getting nicer.
Oh, for sure. And it's worth pointing out that no single stay-at-home order prevents you from getting out and exercising. They all have that as a loophole. Get out of your house, go for a walk. I go for a run. Feels so much better afterwards.
Right. And at this point, I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, I have a pretty sedentary job. But even then, like the steps I take to get to work, to get ready for work, to go to meetings, like before the pandemic, I was probably averaging 10 to 12,000 steps a day. I was trying to get that in. And that included some structured walking breaks, but now like I'm lucky to get 3,000 steps some days. I'm not going to lie to you. So
I never even thought of that.
Yeah, so like
my step count
so much
is
closer
so low.
to the bathroom here.
Right? And there isn't a big building and stairs to walk around every hour. Yeah.
Huh.
If I don't take an actual walk, my step count is pathetically low now, which is probably not healthy. I'm also just not standing up as much, which is also, and I don't have a standing desk here. I have a standing desk at work, but not here.
Wow. I'm going to have to give some thought to this because I hadn't even considered that part of the activity that came from working in an office. What? You guys have opened my eyes.
There are days when I have paced around the house just to get more steps in because I just haven't moved.
Because when my Fitbit's like, buzz, buzz, time to get 250 steps in. When I'm at work, I'm like, okay, time to go take a whiz. But now it's like 5 steps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So
we need like walking buddies to like walk around our blocks with each other every hour or something.
So my encouragement, my admonishment to people, be active as much as you can. But to also, that can be a lot for people. Like getting out of bed on some days for people is a small victory in itself. We celebrate those small victories to be sure. But as you are being active and eating as nutritiously as possible, which is also very important, haven't been following that rule very much at all. Just treat yourself with a little grace and forgiveness. Like this is a new era for people. And I think we're all sort of trying to figure out where we fit in and where our lifestyles fit into this. And so do what you can and treat yourself with grace. And I think you'll turn out better for it. That's my personal 2 cents anyway.
I mentioned earlier the gratitude that I feel, and that's been actually a change that I've been trying to lean into the gratitude. It doesn't come naturally, but to really pay attention to this pandemic is giving us space in our lives that we might not have had. And we joke about the sourdough, but I'm just amazed by the number of families that are saying, okay, let's learn something new. Let's do sidewalk chalk or stained glass windows, or let's, start some seeds. Let's try to learn how to bake bread. We made donuts this morning at my house. Yeast donuts. They were amazing, better than Krispy Kreme. But I also, one thing that I sat down with my kids early on in this crisis, we sat down and we talked about monks, because we're all monks now. But for many, and I know that Lutherans have a complicated relationship with monasticism in general, but I think that for many centuries, the monastic orders really embraced this idea of cloistered living, so that they could focus on the things that really mattered. And so now we're all sort of forced to do this. And if we lean into it rather than lean back, what I've found in my home is that this is a great time if you've let the habit of personal or family devotion slip. Now's a time. You've got the time. You've got the brain space to do this. We're reading more books. We are being more intentional about digging into the Word of God together and making sure that we find some way on Sunday morning to get some worship life into us. But I'm trying to be grateful, but the more I try, the easier it gets to realize that this has been a grace-infused opportunity to lean in to the good, the simple, the quiet things in life.
It definitely gives you more space to think and to be. And something else that I wanted to point out is that the grief that's associated with all of this is very real. And you can we talk a lot with Heidi Gaiman about these paradoxes, holding two things that are kind of opposites, but it's okay to have gratitude for some things and to understand that other people are maybe suffering more than you are, and that there's a reason why we're all at home to protect our neighbors. Social distancing is in place so that we don't all infect each other, but at the same time we are missing out on things. There's a lot of people who had to cancel trips. My husband and I were supposed to go on our 10-year anniversary trip to Chicago this month to see the Ring Cycle from Wagner. It was going to be a huge production. And it,
I'm so sorry,
maybe,
Sarah.
but yeah, thank you. But the grief around missing things that we have been looking forward to is real. And Bree talking about giving yourself grace, but also giving yourself the space to grieve. It is sad that we won't be able to do these things. We are going to miss out on stuff that we've been planning. And just the grief of not being able to be together, to give yourself the space and the time to feel that and to work through it. And if you live with someone else or other people, to talk about it and to not ignore it, because it is a very valid emotion at this point. And to work through that, but also to have the gratitude that because those things aren't happening, that it does open up space and time to do other things and to replace those memories with other things. Even though there is, when that week comes for us that we should have been in Chicago, it's gonna be sad because we're missing a kind of a really important thing that we were really looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, and I think of all of the graduations and the call days and the senior proms and the weddings and the funerals. Like,
we were supposed to be talking about confirmations right now. That was on the calendar, and my son is confirmed, and I don't know when it's going to happen.
Felt banners and cakes. Like, come on, this is a joyous time for a lot of groups of people, and none of that is happening right now, and that just stinks. And to your point about grief, Sarah, too, something that I realized that I've actually been trying to tell my direct reports at work is when all is said and done and we start returning to the office, that's going to be an adjustment. So now that we're used to working from home every day and working around our spouses' classes and switching rooms when we have to switch rooms, we're going to go back to work. We're going to have to get out of bed an hour early to get ready and can't just roll out of bed and go to work. Like, it's going to be like another wave of grieving. It's going to be another wave of adjusting. And so I can't speak up enough for the importance of therapy, for the importance of counseling. It can be a pastor. It could be a professional. Whatever it is you want to do, I think that counseling and therapy of that nature is just one of God's gifts to us. And if you are in the position,
you don't have to wait either.
No,
because
absolutely not.
I know my brother is a counselor, and he's working with clients just like we're doing right now on the video. That it's that anytime you feel like you're overwhelmed, reach out, and there will be someone who's able to talk to you.
As there have been technological advancements with church services, like telehealth has exploded in the last week. Our marriage counselor is like, we got an email the other day. She said, "Oh, your next appointment is going to be over like Skype or whatever." So like, do it. Even if you feel like there is nothing wrong, but you want to address what's going on in the world around you, like, therapy is for everybody. And when I say that I go to marriage counseling, it's not because our relationship is terrible or on the rocks or anything like that. We just go because it's helpful to say things to a third party and sort of decompress and express, and we're better people after the fact. So even if you feel normal, even if you feel like there's nothing wrong, therapy is for everybody. and I will talk that up until my last breath. So if you have the ability to do so, seek it out.
Yeah. But you know what is not necessarily for everybody? And I found this out when I took a break a week or two ago. There is no rule that says you have to be on Apple News or Facebook or
Yes.
Good point.
If your media or social media is creating anxiety in you, you can turn it off. A bunch of us in the lounge Facebook group did it for 48 hours. What was that? A week? Well, we're recording this beforehand. So we did it. It happened. And it was so good. Oh my goodness. My brain rested. I felt more at peace. And now I'm, trying now to limit my exposure to a couple of times a day because I just can't handle it. I can't handle the nonstop 24/7 news and social media coming at me. It doesn't help.
I mean, this is like the longest extending news cycle ever. The only thing that we've been hearing about for weeks is the pandemic, and it's I mean, it's good to be informed, to know what's happening, the new regulations or whatever, and to at least be aware of what's going on around you, but
not every 15 minutes.
Right. I mean, it is anxiety inducing to only be hearing about that all the time.
Make space for memes and dog videos too, guys.
Yes.
And
pay attention to the
internet
funny
shenanigans. Yeah.
So I have found that I've had to make it a point, and this isn't necessarily my usual mode because I am an introvert and I usually get along fine with what I get at work and that sort of thing. But I've had to make it a point to be intentional about basically asking for my friends to spend time with me. Like, hey, can we schedule a walk in the park? We will walk 6 feet away from each other, but can we actually put that on the calendar and meet there so that I can actually see that person and interact with them? And even though that isn't maybe, depending on who you are, that might not be your usual way of, interacting. These are special times. So if you're someone especially who lives alone, ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out and say, hey, I am lonely. I need to talk. And your friends like you. That's why they're your friends. They will want to talk with you. So yeah, definitely do that too.
That's fantastic advice, to advocate for yourself with the people who love you but may not know how best to help you. So tell them.
Yeah.
And they will, I hope.
Yeah.
Well, because your extrovert friends are lonely too, so
that is true.
Exactly.
All right, Bree, you mentioned putting a bow on this about 15 minutes ago, so...
That's a 15-minute bow. That's a big bow.
What else did you have for us before we wrap this up? Or was that it?
I think that's it. People are great. People are good to each other. People are stepping up. As much as it stinks right now, it's also kind of excellent. That's my final thought on that issue.
Yeah. That's the great thing about the Facebook group. Shout out to all the ladies in the Facebook group, which is the Lutheran Ladies Lounge on Facebook. That community started digitally, virtually, however you want to call it. So that community is still there for everyone. So if you're not in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge Facebook group yet, join the Lutheran Ladies Lounge. As always, you can find our podcast episodes, which are perfect for listening to in social isolation. Find our podcast at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge, or search for us on your favorite podcasting app. We will come to you with another episode next week. It may have something else to do about, I don't know, pandemics. Maybe. You'll just have to tune in and find out. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
Oh, what the heck? I'm Bree.
I'm Rachel, wherever I am.
views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.
Yo,
All right.
Grzebski. G. Hey. Grzebski. Hey, can you bring me that Holy Week thing in a bag? The Holy Week in a bag.
And there's your
What we got
outtake,
from
Sarah.
Timothy.
Yep.
Holy Week in a bag.
Holy Week in a bag.